Hey guys, it's Red Nomster, and today what I have for you is another feature I've added to Project Campfire. Now for those of you who don't know, Project Campfire is a video game I'm developing entirely within vanilla Minecraft. If you've watched my previous Project Campfire videos, you may have noticed that there's a new scene that we're playing on today. A majority of the pixel art was provided by Danielle Rise, I'm not entirely sure. A link to their Twitter will be in the description if you'd like to see more of their work. Now, that's only progress in the art direction, but today we're going to be talking about a vital gameplay feature. Now, it's still a work in progress, but it's a major building block for the rest of the game. The feature I'm speaking of is followers, or more accurately, NPC and monster pathfinding. Originally, I wasn't even going to have characters in Project Campfire because I thought it would be impossible to program such a feature in a Minecraft setting. After months of failed attempts, I realized that I already made a similar creation in the past, and it yielded all the answers to my problems. But before we get to that, I'll go ahead and demonstrate an NPC follower in action. As you can see, he looks the same as us for the time being, and he tries to reach us no matter where we are. I have the bounding boxes, the invisible walls that restrict navigation, turned off to show that they also affect not only our player, but computer players as well. After incorporating the bounding boxes with a single clone command, it becomes a more complicated game of tag. The NPC has to actually think about the path to reach our character rather than walk towards us in a straight line. Any monster, townsperson, little scared mouse, or angry chicken will be built off of this mechanic with varied speeds and behaviors. For example, we demonstrated us running from our follower, but in the future, we could likely add the effect of the follower running from us. That means we can have passive mobs, of course like the scared little mouse and stuff like that, running from our character if we're walking through a scene. And to hunt animals and stuff like that, they'd have to escape our grasps in order to survive. Let's roll this concept back. At the beginning of this video, I talked about how I couldn't figure out how to do this at all. Then I realized I succeeded at creating pathfinding NPCs before, and funnily enough, without even the use of a single command. Yeah, it used 100% survival redstone, and was my 25,000 underappreciated subscriber milestone video where I recreated Sims in survival. Now, I'm not going to go over every single detail. I'll add a link in the description if you'd like to watch the original video. A major thing to take away from the concept, though, is that it abuses AI that already exists in Minecraft itself. I program a zombie from scratch when I have a perfectly good zombie right here at my disposal. In my Sims game, similar to Project Campfire, I used a villager behind the scenes. Instead of translating that movement to a pixel art sprite, I translated that movement to a zombie. I abused villager AI by attaching bone meal to dispensers, and telling the farmer villager where to go on command would in turn tell the zombie where to go, the same exact location, just on the different y-axis. This, similar to Project Campfire, allows me to use the villager to activate redstone and test for things that aren't visible from the display that the player looks at while playing. There is one big AI issue left to deal with in Project Campfire though, and that was how the hell do I translate the movement from the zombie down there to a sprite up here? I tried so many different methods, but not to bore you, the one that stuck was, well, the same method that the player uses to control his sprite. The zombie can't be in a fixed position, as is my player, because he needs to do the pathfinding to get to the villager. This meant that the detection needed to move with them, in the form of 4 armor stands detecting each cardinal direction. Now I'll take a quick look at the commands that it took to translate the zombie's movements to his fully animated sprite that you see following me now. So this is another important example of the manipulation of AI that I'm using from Minecraft that already exists, and that's by using a villager golem. Now the reason the villager golem is even here and constantly teleporting to our villager is because if it wasn't, the zombie would just keep trying to walk into the villager that has no AI, and it would make the sprite walk in circles and stuff around our sprite and look pretty stupid, as well as the fact that if the zombie is in the way of our villager, the villager golem will just push him out of the way, and this creates the effect that I showed you earlier of him, not trying to take up the same exact space as our sprite. And actually, before we get into the commands, we're going to take a quick look at bounding boxes and what they actually are. We showed it off a little bit in my last video, but I wanted to show a visual representation of how cloning them in works and how it's so simple. So for the first thing, the layers of red blocks are essentially the brain of the game. This first one right here is at y=5, so it's 5 blocks from bedrock. And this second layer is y=6, and that's the only differentiation between each layer and their blocks. For example, we play over here where there is currently no bounding box, because I'm recording this little bit before I actually record the bounding box part of the video. But if I go ahead and just type in this little clone command somewhere, boop, we have the entire layer and bounding box cloned in. So every time I switch a scene to another scene, it'll happen immediately, and the blocks will clone and the bounding boxes will be implemented immediately as well. So you won't be being attacked through walls or something right when you start a game. The map and the game knows what it's doing, and it knows it real quick. And yeah, I know, I can use the structure blocks instead of clone commands. It's more efficient. I don't care. It looks super cool with a bunch of red blocks over there, so I'm gonna do it like that. I'm lazy, okay? Also, same reason I'm using 3 redstone dust here and a lever is because I'm lazy. I'm gonna optimize the game as much as I can as I go. These things just speed up the process of actually creating features and being able to show you guys. So that's why I'm doing that, okay? Alright, I had some people talk to me about that. Nonetheless, we're going to jump right into what everything is. As you can see, there's a scoreboard on the right side that says enemy stand. And what that means, it's detecting when the enemy is standing. And I mean enemy as in the follower, things like that. Monsters will be attracted to you the same way followers will, so that's why I have it like that. Nonetheless, it's only going when the commands are being activated by a redstone. So when the game is on and there's actually a monster on the frame, that's the only time it's going to be counting that scoreboard, so it's not wasting resources. That's what the scoreboard looks like real quick. And as you can see, this module right here actually looks extremely similar to the module that uses our walking for our player, which is right here. It's a little bit different though. It actually was a lot easier to do than mine, mainly because I had already made mine, so I know what I need to accomplish to be able to make my little enemy down here moving. Now, the biggest thing is that I have a few more things summoning. I don't have entities for my character because I have that little plus sign shape up there, but the zombie needs to be able to teleport those entities around, and they are in the form of this right here, which is these armor stands with damage 14 concrete on their head. So you can see that they are, visually represented. They don't need to be visible, and it would actually save on resources if I make them invisible and stuff and don't show the block on their head. I'm just using it as for the purpose of this video. But nonetheless, we do an execute at enemy and summon these little armor stands in each cardinal direction around the player at a specific coordinate, which is actually really important. It's 1.5 or 1.4 blocks in each cardinal direction around the zombie that we summon right here. Now, there's a few more things that the zombie does other than having the tag of enemy and the tag of move that are really important. And the biggest one is the attributes that he has, which is essentially a very, very specific thing. The follow range can be whatever I want to do. If I want to have a monster be passive unless you get too close, I can easily do that. Or if I want him to be able to attack you from across the frame, say if he's an archer, I could do that as well. But that's a follow range. We're way over here. Where are we? Movement speed base right here. 0.34 is the magic number. For example, if it was like 0.32 or the speed of a zombie, you would see the character go like this. He would walk like this instead of smoothly in a straight line. It's never going to walk as smoothly as an actual player does, because a player can totally decide whether he wants to walk diagonally. Zombies have this habit of, instead of walking diagonally like this, they staircase where they go like this, which is kind of stupid, but that's okay. It's a limit of Minecraft, and I think it looks perfectly fine, especially since if it was an entity other than the same sprite that I'm using, it might not look as different because some people just walk different as well. Nonetheless, so that's this command right here. He's got a bunch of other stuff, like he's silent, he's facing a specific direction, and all that stuff doesn't really matter. He has a nether star on his head so he doesn't burn in the daylight. That's a big thing because he'll just die, and I think he's invincible, so it doesn't really matter, but he'll just be on fire and stuff, which is stupid. And these 4 armor stands, like I said, are in each cardinal direction. So this is negative Z right here, and then for example, this is positive Z. The next one would be negative X and then positive X. So we have a plus sign shape similar to the plus sign shape we have up there. And then the last thing we have is, what is this? I don't even know what this is. Oh, this is the hitbox. Now this is actually important. Zombie is close quarter combat, and he tries to be in the same block that the villager is when he attacks him. So that villager golem has a much larger hitbox and will stop him from doing so. I talked about that earlier, so I'm not going to go over that too much. But literally all I'm doing, which I could be doing differently as well, is right here. It's just a command block that teleports the hitbox, which is the villager golem, to the actual villager, which is tagged character. So let's turn this baby on. As you can see, we have some numbers crunching up in there, and if we actually go and play the game, which is this little button right here, you'll see that we have our villager golem, we have our zombie trying to get to us. There's a visual representation of that, right? If you look at the right side, it says enemy stand. Now, it's counting up because the enemy's just standing. It's not moving. instead of having an enemy stand tag and an enemy move tag, I just have, 0 being enemy moving, So if he's walking around and the zombie's trying to get to him, it's always going to be under like 3 or 4. So that's how I'm detecting if the zombie is moving or if the zombie is not, which allows me to replace the sprite texture from running constantly to standing still constantly. And that's very important and a big thing that a lot of people look over when they're trying to make something similar to this game. So let's go ahead and just keep that in mind. We have the enemy stand constantly counting up. We could just turn it off like so. And we look at the first command. Now, again, just like my module over there for my player detection and his walking, the zombie has 4 different lines. So as long as we talk about one line, we can pretty much designate how the other 3 lines work as well. So we're going to look at this first guy, which is constantly being activated, and it's executing at the tag of enemy. Now, the tag of enemy is the zombie. I'm executing at the zombie, and I'm detecting, similar to the villager, if there's air in a specific direction. And if there is, in the specific direction he's trying to walk, just so he doesn't try to walk through walls and stuff like that, because we're actually teleporting the zombie as well, as him just walking around normally pathfinding. We execute at E tag equals enemy, the same zombie, and then we test for relative to the zombie for north in the radius of 1. Now, the reason we're using north is because that's the north line. So this right here is the south line, and then of course we got east, and then we got west in the radius of 1. And that's how we're testing, if we're walking left, right, forward, and backwards in the 4 cardinal directions. Now, it doesn't have to be a super accurate number like my detect command over there and mixing it with attributed boots and stuff like that, because screen jitter does not matter to a zombie that's down here that you don't even see. The screen jitter is not relayed onto the sprite. All the accuracy was just to get rid of the screen jitter for the player so it doesn't look like he's moving around and being teleported back. But we are doing the same basic concept, which is if it does successfully test that we walked in the north direction, or that the zombie walked in the north direction, then it will execute at enemy and then TP the enemy, which is, he's teleporting himself 0.5 blocks in that direction. And that's important. The reason being is because we're executing and testing if there's, a 1 block radius of being in north. So that means that if it's within 1 block, that means if we teleport him exactly half a block back, we'll be exactly in the same spot that he just was. Math. Next thing we're going to look at is executing at north, and I think this is actually the same for all of them. I just executed at the same exact entity every time for the cardinal directions, because keeping them all in the same exact unison is important. So if north is like slightly offset from south and stuff like that, like it's a little bit more to the left, eventually if something bugs out, it'll mess up the whole thing. So that's what we're doing. So execute at north, which is basically just executing at all the armor stands in a whole, as TPing the tag move in this direction. Now, move is the tag that all of the cardinal directions have. So first of all, the plus sign shape of armor stands has the tags north, east, south, and west to separate them, and then move to combine them. So if I want to move all of them, I don't just do at E tag this, at E tag that, at E that, blah, blah, blah. I just have one tag for all of them. As simple as that. And then it teleports at 1 block. So that means that if I teleport the zombie half a block back, and then teleport all of the armor stands forward 1 block, that means that I've successfully, or the zombie has successfully walked half a block, right? And that means that when the armor stands teleport 1 block forward, they will then be 1.4 blocks separated again. So it constantly teleports the zombie, or instead of constantly teleporting, how I'm teleporting the player to the middle of the block, I'm teleporting the cardinal directions to be completely centered around the zombie, it was just a hard thing to figure out. It's very simple, obviously, but just the brain power it took from my little brain to figure this stuff out was tough. So anyways, so it teleports exactly 1 block. And then TP at E tag equals character of 2, and then it teleports a sprite. So if it successfully teleports detects that the zombie walks in a specific direction, it teleports in that direction, makes the little red plus sign follow it, so it can then detect further in case he moves again, because he's moving pretty fast. He's got a fast movement speed to be able to keep up with the villager movement that I'm doing. And then it, of course, does the same exact thing that our character does, so it sticks to the exact same grid mathematically that our sprite does as well, by moving 0.0125 blocks depending on which direction he walks in. And then right after it does the sprite, it sets enemy stand score to 0. And what that does is basically says that he moved. Because if the zombie moves and the plus sign detects that it moves, that means that the sprite should be moving too, which means that the sprite has a running animation. It's important that we, set this score back to 0. That way we know when the little sprite should be moving or not moving animated wise for the sprite. And then the last command block right here is executing at E with the enemy stand minimum of 4, which means if it's above 4, because it constantly counts up if the zombie is not moving, that means that the zombie's not moving, right? Because if it's below 4, that means the zombie is constantly resetting it fast enough, so that's below 4 constantly. Above 4 means that he's standing still. That's why it's called enemy stand, and 4 is the minimum. And then score walk 2 is just how I'm simply setting it up now. I also have score walk 4 in this one. 2 is facing that way, and then 4 is facing that way for my character. So I just have them face the same direction that my character faces for simplicity's sake, instead of trying to figure out which way the zombie is facing and stuff. I don't think it affects the game that much, so that's what I'm going to leave it as for now. But an important thing to take note as is that this is not a conditional command block. It's unconditional, unlike all the other command blocks, because the facing of those is regardless of if all the other ones are successful. Because as long as we have a walk score of 2, and then their stand of 2 or stand of 4, that means that he's standing still and should be facing a specific direction, and only activated when that specific score is accurate. So it's not going to be giving any false negatives, because if we're moving, this command won't even be activated. So it's not going to be overriding these ones over here that tell the armor stand data value to be 8, which is a running animation, as well as this one over here, which is 9, which is a running animation in the opposite direction. I also have this bad boy over here, which is going to piss off a lot of hardcore command blockers. It's not a function. Look at this. It's a hopper clock, my dude. We have this little thing constantly running, and it's on a slow clock because for some reason using a 20-tick clock executing this command, which is a very simple command, is executing at the character and testing for, that plus sign shape. That's it. In a specific radius, and I'm doing the plus sign because it's basically like a larger hitbox of the zombie, so I can detect it sooner with this hopper clock. Nonetheless, radius of 2, and all it does is when it's successful is change the generic movement speed of enemy to, where's it at? Kaboom. To 0, which means it can't move, and it's more effective than giving it the slowness command 20 times a second, or for a specific amount of time, and clearing that effect eventually. Just set the movement base to 0, and then we got this bad boy, which is an enemy data, entity data, which does the opposite. This torch clock is obviously the opposite. So let's just take a look at the number, I guess. Why not? You guys can complain if I don't. It sets it back to the actual speed that the zombie should be. So basically, what this means is, I'll just show you. We got our little villager golem, and then of course the zombie comes and gets us, and he still constantly just looks at us, but because he has a movement speed of 0, he won't constantly be bumping into us, which won't mess up these sprites over here. He won't just constantly be trying to get as close as possible to you like a crazy, fangirl or something. And when we start walking away, he won't immediately chase us. It'll take the amount of time that the hopper clock takes to detect it to follow us. This means that he won't just mirror our movements exactly, which looks unorganic. It looks a little bit better like this, I believe. When he walks around, he waits to follow us until we actually do something. That way, it means we're always going to be the first through a doorway. We'll be the first to, choose whether or not we combat an enemy that's in front of us, or we'll be able to get to the chest without the freaking teammate being in the way. It essentially stops it from being Lydia from Skyrim, right? But that's all I really have for this video, guys. So if you enjoyed it, leave a like, and of course subscribe if you're new here. It helps out a lot. And if you would like to help out the project, I do have a Patreon started for Project Campfire. If you want to affect the direct quality of the game, or speed up the process of actually making the game, you're welcome to help. The link will be in the description. But that's all I really have, so I'll see you guys in the next one.